Okay guys, today we're going to learn about solving radical equations. So what I want you guys to do is go ahead and start the warm-up on your own and see if you can remember how to do this. We're going to talk about canceling square roots today. So if you remember how to cancel a square root is a function that looks like this. You guys are going to go ahead and cancel it by doing the operation of squaring. So if you then square this square root, they're going to go away and you're going to be left with just the value of x. Now I know that we've done this before, but we haven't exactly solved equations, and that's what we're doing today. So just keep this, this property in mind throughout the entire lesson. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. A radical equation, guys, is an equation with a variable that occurs underneath what's called a radicand, and a radicand is just that little square root sign that you guys are used to seeing. It will look like this. And then it's called a radical equation when it actually has an equal sign in it. It should be noted that when you're doing these radical equations algebraically, you're going to sometimes get something called an extraneous root. An extraneous root is a solution that is going to be excluded, therefore there are no real solutions. So after each equation, you're going to have to check your answer and make sure it's correct. So every single problem will require a step where we check our answers and we make sure they're right. If the answers are not right, what you're going to do is you're going to say it's an extraneous solution and there are no real solutions for that problem. And we'll go ahead and show you guys a couple examples. So again, an extraneous root is a solution that does not exist, therefore there are no real solutions. So some problems might have no solutions. Let's go ahead and get started with our first problem. I want you guys to help me solve this equation. It's the square root of x minus 3 and then minus 3 again equals 0. To start this process, you should start with everything that's not inside the radicand or the square root, meaning this negative 3 right here. In order to get rid of the negative 3, we're going to have to add 3 to both sides. And when I do so, I will get this equation right here, which is the square root of 3 equals 3. Now this is the part from our warm-up, guys. To get rid of the square root, you're going to have to go ahead and square both sides of the equation. Oh, excuse me. Okay, square both sides of the equation, and it will look like this. When you square both sides, the square root cancels on the left, and then 3 squared on the right is going to turn into 9. Now in order to get the minus 3 to go away, you're going to have to add 3 to both sides, which is when you get 12. Now this is our answer, but again we have to check and make sure it's a true answer, so we're going to go ahead and check our solution. So I'm going to go ahead and write the left hand side right here and then the right hand side on the right, meaning I need my right hand side right here to equal 0, and I'm going to plug my left hand side in here. I'm going to plug in my 12 for x and make sure it equals 0. So right now that's what I'm doing. 12 minus 3. 12 minus 3 is 9. The square root of 9 is 3, and then 3 minus 3 is 0. Therefore they check out, and you can say that 12 is actually a solution to this equation. This section should be pretty simple and more familiar to you guys than the past section, so hopefully the homework tonight won't be so bad. Let's go ahead and try another one. I want you guys to do this one on your own and then pause the video and check your solution after you get one. So it's going to be either 1, 2, 3, or 4, or A, B, C, or D, whatever you want to call them. But go ahead and solve this equation right here. Hit pause right now and then continue when you have a solution. Okay guys, if you solve the problem, the solution should appear like this on the right hand side of my screen. It should be the square root of 2x minus 1 plus 2 equals 5. What you're going to do is you're going to subtract 2 from both sides. 5 minus 2 turns to 3. Now to get rid of the square, you're going to square both sides. If I square 3, I get 9. If I square the square root of 2x minus 1, I just have 2x minus 1. At this point, you should add 1 to get the 2x by itself, turning the 9 into a 10, and then we'll divide by 2 on both sides to get x by itself, so x equals 5. Therefore, the correct answer should have been choice 3, or C. Okay guys, let's go ahead and have you try another one. I want you to practice this one on your own, so go ahead and pause the video and see if you can get a solution. Alright, now compare your solution to my work on the right hand side of your screen. You should have the square root of 2x minus 3 minus 3 equals 6. If I add 3 to both sides, the 6 will turn into a 9, and I'm left with just the square root of 2x minus 3 on the left. Now again, to get rid of a square root, you have to square it. So when you square the left-hand side, you get 2x minus 3, and when you square 9, you should get 81. At this point, to get the 2x by itself, I'm going to have to add 3 to both sides of my equation. 81 plus 3 turns to 84, and then again we divide by 2 to get x by itself. So x should equal 42. Therefore, the correct answer to this problem should have been choice number 1, 42. Okay, let's go ahead and walk through another one together and see if we can kind of solve this equation. It has two variables now on both sides, which should be okay once we get through it. First, I want you guys to subtract 4 from both sides of your equation in order to get the radical by itself. So the point here, guys, is to get the radical or the square root by itself. Now, because it is a square root, to get rid of it, we're going to have to square it, meaning we're going to have to square both sides of the equation. So x minus 4 squared. Now, this is what we did kind of in class 2 days ago. X minus 4 squared is one of those terms that you're going to have to use the process of FOIL on to multiply this out, because it's two terms being squared. So the left-hand side will cancel, and you're left with 4x plus x squared, but this right-hand side right here, I FOILed x minus 4 times x minus 4, and I came up with x squared minus 8x plus 16. Now I have a bunch of variables that need to be combined together, so we're going to move things from the left and the right-hand side, and when you do so and you reduce, you're going to get 8x equals 12, and then I need to divide by 8 on both sides. Therefore, I get x is equal to 3 over 2. Now, I should definitely check my work and make sure this is the right answer, so I'm going to go ahead and do a check here over on the right-hand side of the screen. So if I have 4 plus the square root of 4 plus x squared, and it's supposed to be equal to x, I'm going to say my x is going to be my 3 over 2, and then my 3 over 2 also gets plugged into my left-hand side of the equation. So I have my left-hand side and my right-hand side. So the left-hand side I'm going to go ahead and work out by starting with the square on the inside. I should square both the 3 and the 2, turning it into 9 over 4. Now I can combine 4 plus 9 over 4 with a common denominator, and I will get 25 over 4. If I square root 25 over 4, remember you square root the top and then you square root the bottom. So you're going to have 4 plus 5 over 2. Now again, if you find another common denominator and add these together, you're going to end up with 13 over 2, which you should realize at this point, 13 over 2 does not equal 3 over 2. Therefore, x equals 3 over 2 is what we call an extraneous solution, meaning there are no real solutions for this problem. So even though we worked it out and we got an answer, it's not a real answer, so you would be able to cross it out and then box no real solutions for this particular problem. Okay, let's go ahead and try another one. I want you guys to try this one on your own and see if you guys can figure it out, so hit pause and then go ahead and continue when you are ready. Okay guys, over here on the right hand side of the screen, the solution should be where I square both sides, meaning leaving me with x plus 6 equals x squared, and then I'm going to have to move the x and the 6 to the opposite side of my equation to get everything on the same side. I'll do that by subtracting x and subtracting 6 from both sides. Then I'm left with x squared minus x minus 6 equals 0, and this right here is a quadratic equation. If you remember, quadratic equations can be solved by factoring. So if I factor out this particular equation, I'm left with x minus 3 times x plus 2. Therefore, I have x is equal to 3 and x is equal to negative 2. So your answer here, guys, should be choice number 1. Negative 2, comma 3 is the solution set for this problem. Okay, why don't you try again? Do this one by yourselves, guys. Hit pause, try and find an answer. It's either 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then continue on when you guys are ready. Alright guys, if you have solved your problem, hopefully you found out that after checking these, you also had an extraneous solution in this problem. So let's go through the steps and make sure that you guys got it right. So you should have squared both sides of the equation to start with, leaving you with 9x plus 10 equals x squared. At this point, I need to move everything to one side of the equation, so I will do so by subtracting 9x and subtracting 10. Again, we have a quadratic equation right here. The quadratic equation can be solved by factoring. When I factor this problem, I'm going to get x minus 10 times x plus 1. I'm going to then go ahead and say x is equal to 10 and x is equal to 1. So if you forgot to check your answer, you would have chosen choice number 4. But choice number 4 is incorrect because you should see that negative 1 is an extraneous solution. Therefore, the only real solution is x equals 10, and choice 3 should have been your answer for this problem. Choice 3 was the correct answer. Alright, let's go ahead and try one more equation. I want you guys to help me solve this equation. It's a little bit different because it has two square roots this time, two radicals. So in order to do this, I need to separate them on both sides. So I'm going to add the square root of x plus 7 to both sides. And then I'm going to get this particular equation right here where it says the square root of 2x plus 4 equals the square root of x plus 7. Now, to get rid of a square, we're going to square it, and we have to square both sides of the equation, and it kind of works kind of neat right here because when you square both sides, both square roots are going to go away, and you're going to be left with just the equation 2x plus 4 equals x plus 7. Now, if you combine like terms by moving the x and the 7 to the other side, you're going to get x equals 3. I should go ahead and check this and verify my solution. So the left-hand side of my solution was 2x plus 4 minus the square root of x plus 7, and the right-hand side equaled 0. If I go ahead and plug in my 3, you're going to have the variable 2 times 3 plus 4 minus the square root of 3 plus 7, and keep doing the work, you're going to get 0. Therefore, the right side equals the left side, and this is a true solution. So x equals 3 is the solution to this particular equation right here. Let's see one more example of another extraneous solution just to make sure that you guys are checking all of your work and you guys are understanding that sometimes there are no real solutions. So let's go ahead and try this equation right here. I'm going to have to square both sides to get rid of the square root. So what we're going to do is we're going to square the left and square the right. When you square the left-hand side, it goes away and you are left with just 3x plus 1, but then again this side right here must be FOILed because it's x minus 3 squared, meaning there are two terms. It's a binomial, and a binomial squared must be FOILed. So let's go ahead and do the work. You're going to get 3x plus 1 equals x squared minus 6x plus 9. And at this step, you guys need to start combining like terms. I would go ahead and subtract 3x and subtract 1 from both sides of the equation, and then you should be left with this equation right here. X squared minus 9x plus 8 equals 0. Now you can go ahead and factor your equation. When you factor this equation, you should get x minus 8 times x minus 1 equals 0. Therefore, x is equal to 8 and x is equal to 1. Don't forget, you should check these answers and make sure they're correct. So if I plug back into my original equation right here, I plug back in my 8 first. I'm going to get the square root of 3 times 8 plus 1. And that turns into 8 minus 3, and then this is going to be 5 equals 5. Therefore, it checks out, and 8 is definitely a solution. So I'm going to go ahead and box it right now. X is a solution of 8. Let's go ahead and check the next solution, which should be 1. So if I plug a 1 into both sides of my equation, a square root of 3 times 1 plus 1 equals 1 minus 3. Now you're going to see 2 equals negative 2, which is not a solution. So actually cross it out, and x equals 1 is not a solution, and there's only one answer to this problem, and the answer is x equals 8. So guys, when you start your homework tonight or in class tomorrow, make sure that you guys are doing the check step, because if you don't check your answer, you're not sure if you're going to get the right solution in the end. Okay, the homework is going to be after this last problem, because we're also not just doing square roots, we're doing cube root equations. So if you remember, 1 over 3 is a cube root, so this is just a radical with a 3 on the outside of it. I'm going to leave it as a fraction so you guys can see we can still do this if it is a fraction, but remember this is the same thing as the cube root of 2x plus 1. So to solve this equation, I'm going to first start out by moving the 1 to both sides, subtracting 1 on each side to get the radical by itself. So then here I have the 2x plus 1 to the 1/3 equals negative 1. And now to get rid of a cubed root, just like a square root, you're going to have to actually cube this one instead of squaring it. So we're going to go ahead and cube the left, which means I have to cube the right. If I cube the left-hand side, the radical will go away, and I am left with just 2x plus 1. If I cube -1, you should notice -1 times -1 is +1, but times another -1 is also -1, so it stays -1. Now we're going to go ahead and solve for x by subtracting 1 from both sides, getting -1 in our end. So then x equals -1. You should check this solution and plug it back in and make sure it's correct. So let's go ahead and check it and plug it back in. So again, this is the cube root of 2 times -1 plus 1 and then plus 1. You should notice that when you do this operation, you get 0 equals 0. So this is actually a solution to my problem. So x equals -1 is the real answer. Alright guys, this is the homework, problems 1 through 23 in your section workbook 6.6. Again, don't forget to rewatch the video if you guys have any questions and bring them to class so we can clarify anything that you don't understand. And I will see you guys tomorrow.